Welcome to another episode of the Hyperight Data Talks. Today, I'm excited to be here with Caroline Carruthers, who is Chief Executive at Carruthers & Jackson. Caroline, welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's lovely to talk to you too.
As a speaker at the upcoming 10th edition at the Data Innovation Summit, Caroline will talk about why data transformations fall apart when the leader leaves. So as for today's conversation, Caroline, I'd like to start our conversation by asking you to share a bit about yourself, what do you do, and also what are you currently working on?
It's not as easy a question of what I'm currently working on as people would think, because I like working on lots of different things. But to tell you a little bit about myself, I was one of the first chief data officers, I think one of the very first females chief data officers in the UK. I have worked for the likes of Network Rail and other financial institutes. My background is also, I'm the co-author of books like The Chief Data Officer's Playbook, Data-Driven Business Transformation, and more recently, Halo Data. I also run the Chief Data Officer Summer School, which helps create the next generation of Chief Data Officers. And the final, I guess, cherry on the cake for me is I'm the Chief Exec of Carruthers & Jackson, who helps lots of other organisations get more from their data safely and ethically. So I feel a little bit like I should say, and a partridge on pear tree at the end of that, because there's so many things in that list.
Thank you for sharing some of your contributions with the ones who are listening. I would like to ask you, at the upcoming summit, you're going to be talking about data transformations and why they tend to fail and fall apart when a leader leaves. I'm interested to hear about what got you interested in this challenge, and why do you think leadership changes have such a big impact in organizations?
Thank you. And I can't wait to attend the summit and speak to everybody in person. I'm really looking forward to it. What got me interested in the topic was because this has actually happened to me. So I am friends with a lot of other chief data officers and data leaders around the world. And it's a conversation that we've been having recently, but it actually has happened to me in sort of a previous iteration before I was the chief executive of Carruthers & Jackson. So I have led lots of data transformations, and I was so sure while I was leading one or two of the first ones that I led, that I'd done everything that I was supposed to. So yes, I was out there talking to people, but I had a fantastic team. Everybody knew their roles. We'd worked and interacted with lots of other parts of the organisation, and all of those things were in place. And I guess the very first time it happened to me, I was so disappointed that when I chose to leave that role to move to another role, that once I'd left, a lot of the things that I put in place started to fall a bit. So it wasn't that the team weren't fantastic. It wasn't that they hadn't got a purpose, the vision, all those other things that were in place. But without me almost being that little linchpin, and I feel like this has been very complimentary about myself here, but I've seen it happen in lots of organisations, where without one central person whose core idea it was, when they're removed from the situation, things start unraveling. And that was why I wanted to sort of talk about this on the stage and talk about some of the lessons that I've learned are key to make sure it's not just about you.
You touched upon your journey a little bit, so that was going to be my next question. Can you maybe share some of the lessons that you're going to speak about, of course, at the summit, but just get a sneak peek of what did you learn when you found yourself in these challenges?
Absolutely. So I think I heard a quote recently, and I can't remember who it attributes to, but I think it's really, really important and something that we should remind ourselves, is that you don't learn from success, you learn from when things go wrong. And it was the learning from that very first time for me that things started to go wrong when I was so convinced that I was successful beforehand that made a big difference. And for me, going forward, it was not just enough about having things written down and documented. It was about actually having other people breathe life into it, not just yourself. It was about learning to take a step back. And it is important that you have leaders in the team, not just a leader in the team. It's how you share that load. It is about how you interact with other parts of the organization. So these are all like key little snippets that I'm going to go into a lot more detail about putting really practical and pragmatic things in place that make sure that your legacy lives on once you decide to move on and do something different. I know chief data officers tend to fall into two camps. If you're like me, I really like solving big problems. So I like going into an organization, setting off transformations, making sure they work. But I'm the kind of person that once I feel like the problem has been solved, or at least if it's on the path to being solved, I'm looking for the next problem that I want to move on to. So it's how you make sure that the people that you bring around you are moving forward with that kind of journey, and that organizations can get the best from you, but you get the best from them as well.
I cannot agree more with you, and I'm also sure that our listeners will agree that it's not just success that matters, it's only failure, because you learn from it. I am also curious to hear what are your thoughts on how can organizations as a whole, not just the leaders, how can organizations create a culture where failures are actually an opportunity, a learning opportunity, rather than something else?
I think that is so important. And I know it's something that you and I have spoke about in the past as well. It's one of those things that I think is fundamental to us as leaders, and it's not just about accepting failure as a route to success, but it's almost celebrating those failures. Now, I just want to clarify when I talk about that it isn't about keep doing the same thing wrong and celebrating that. If you keep hitting your head against the same brick wall in the same place and it doesn't crack, then please do something different. But I guess, to use another phrase that's probably overused, it's if you aren't failing, you aren't trying hard enough. So if you're really innovating, if you're really striving to make a difference, if you're leading a true transformation that we're talking about when it comes to data and transformations in organizations, then you have to be not just prepared to fail, but celebrate it, because that is a path to learning, to be able to move forward. And from that, you figure out a way not to do it, and you can try and do something else. I guess I fall back into the kind of science discipline of data science. So, when to conduct a proper scientific experiment, you put forward a hypothesis. You then create an experiment to decide whether that hypothesis is correct or not. If it works, fantastic. Could it have worked better? If it didn't work, brilliant. What did you learn? What would you try next? And it's about creating situations so that virtuous circle is constantly, iteratively happening in the organizations that we're leading. And that's why I think it's fundamental to start and celebrate those failures, because it's really easy to celebrate successes. And but if we get into the habit of that, we aren't striving to make enough of a difference.
And you mentioned that a part of your experience is coaching both businesses and data professionals.
Yes.
So from your perspective, what qualities would you say are essential for someone as a data leader?
So the very first quality that I would always say that's important for anybody who is working in data, not just the data leader, is to actually be enthusiastic about what we do. So to tell a story about something that happened to me many, many, many years ago. So I was at a data conference and I was in a room full of lots of other data professionals, and somebody sat there across the room from me and said, well, what we do, it's quite boring, right? And I literally wanted to shout at them. I definitely disagreed with them. I do remember that, because I think what we do is solve some amazing problems, is create a fantastic value. We can make a real difference. Data is an incredibly powerful tool, and all the things we use it for through digital, through AI, through all the other innovations, through tech, it provides the foundation to really leverage all of those things in an amazing way. So for me, the core fundamental thing that I would want to see from every data professional is to genuinely believe in the difference that we can make and the power of what we have at our fingertips. So that would definitely be the first thing.
And I think that comes down to passion, if you would agree.
Definitely. And, it's not just funny, but I was having a conversation earlier on today, and one of the things that I do think about data professionals is we are brilliant at solving problems. We are great at getting the job done. We are great at making a difference. We're possibly not as good about telling people about the difference that we made. And in organizations, that if you're trying to elicit a change, if you're trying to promote a different way of working, if you're trying to get other people to change their behaviors, then it's not about just doing the job. It's about making sure that people understand the difference that's been made and the potential that it can create for the organization as well.
Thank you for that. I would like to move to the key factors.
Mm-hmm.
How do you ensure that one data transformation leads to long-term benefits for one organization?
I think the very first thing that I would start with is to focus on outcomes, not outputs. So what is the difference, and being able to clearly articulate the difference that the transformation is going to make and what the organization will look like in the future. And the key phrase that I use on so many occasions is what's in it for them. Now, that sounds like such a simple question, but to break that down, it's not just what's in it for them as the organization. It can be what's in it for them, the department. If you're trying to bring somebody to your way of thinking, it's what's in it for them as a person. So it's having that clear North Star of the difference that it's going to make, because in most organizations, everybody sits within comfort zones. So they know how they do things, they know what's going to happen if they do things in a particular way. If you're leading a transformation, you want them to act and work in a different way, hopefully with different tools or a different way of thinking or communicating in a different way, using data in a different way. And without that clear articulation of why they should make a change, you will be constantly being pushed backwards. So I think that has to be the first step of understanding why you're doing things, having that North Star and being able to articulate the difference it makes. The other thing that I would really want to pull out is the days of doing massive big transformations and the organisation waiting 3 to 5 years before a difference is made have long gone. If you're doing that, please don't do that anymore. That's not going to work. We have to be doing clearly fixing problems as we go. So if you are not demonstrating value within 6 to 8 week periods, then you are going to struggle to bring the organisation with you. And remember, it's not just about solving problems, it's about telling people. And then you solve another problem and you tell people and you remind them about the problem that you already solved. And then you build on that. And if you do it right, it isn't about solving a problem in one part of the organisation and a problem over here and a problem over here. It's about solving problems that align to each other. And by doing that, you build your data foundations, you build the change so that every problem that you solve becomes a bigger difference for the organisation. Hopefully that makes sense.
It certainly does, Caroline. Thank you. From the insights you provided so far, I'm sure that the people who work with data and are listening to this conversation can extract advice from. But to sum up our conversation today, what would be one last advice for people who work as data leaders?
Oh, there's so much advice out there. I think the thing that I would probably say is please don't take yourself too seriously. It's very easy when it comes to working with data that we get stuck into the problems and, when we talk about celebrating failures and all those other things. But it's to have a little bit of fun on the way, because you can solve a problem and you can enjoy yourself at the same time.
Which is the exact same thing that you mentioned earlier, of course. Thank you for that, Caroline. Thank you for this amazing conversation today. I really enjoyed it, and I hope our listeners did too. So the topic of data leadership is one fascinating topic, and I look forward to hearing more from you at the summit. And for anyone who wants to learn more on this, don't miss Caroline's presentation at the Data Innovation Summit. Thank you again, Caroline, and I hope to see you at the summit.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Everybody take care.